spongebob my ass.
I'm only 4. Bonjour, Monsieur Pussycat.
Cracking toast, Robert.
Start spreading the news.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the short podcast about short films. I'm your host, and we are discussing the Academy Award for Best Animated Short. Today's episode is about the 26th year of the award at the 30th Academy Awards, which celebrates the films of 1957. Today's guest is a frequent one on the pod, appearing now for the third time. You last heard him in our longest episode to date, talking about Lend a Paw and the nominees of 1941. Please welcome back Christof. Hello, Christof.
Woohoo! Happy to be back.
And let's hope that this one isn't as long as that one was.
I don't think it will be quite as long, although we never know, because technically these are 5 short films, but in a way these are 8 short films, so who knows how long we're going to talk.
Yeah, so, and it's like, I remember when we recorded that first episode, and I was thinking in my head, it's like, okay, nothing is going to be as long as this one. And nothing has yet, but it's like, there have been a few other hour-long episodes. So it's just like, this podcast is getting longer. And it's just like, I did not expect that to happen, but it's how it is. So remind us, what is your familiarity with this category, the Best Animated Short category?
I've seen every available short that has ever been nominated in the category. There are many films I love. Some I don't love quite as much. I have to admit, without spoiling anything, this particular roster of nominees is not my favorite batch. There are a few that I really don't care a lot for, and I don't think I really absolutely love any of the films I'm going to talk about, but there's still some interesting discussions waiting here.
All right. We'll find out whether or not I agree with your assessments. But let's get into these nominees.
Well, I hope we will agree more than last time, because last time we basically agreed on racism is bad and nothing else. So I think we will have to agree slightly more on this one.
Oh, yeah. Like last time, there were 10 nominees. And we did not agree on most of them, except for, like you said, the 2 ones that were very racist and very bad. But the rest of them. Anyway, so this year has only 5 nominees. Our first nominee and the year's winner is Birds Anonymous, directed by Friz Freleng. This is the 4th and final win for Edward Selzer on his 10th nomination. This is also the 6th nomination and 3rd win for Sylvester the Cat, as well as the 4th nomination and 2nd win for Tweety Bird. However, this is the last we will see of Tweety as well. While Sylvester is a versatile character, frequently getting paired with a number of other characters, and thus more opportunities for Oscar nominations, Tweety is a Sylvester-only character, and with such a narrow scope, Tweety gets kicked out of the Oscar convo earlier than some of his Warner brethren. But 4 noms and 2 wins is nothing to scoff at. That's the same record as Mr. Magoo, after all. Anyway, what's this final Tweety Sylvester short we're left with? The short features Sylvester joining Birds Anonymous, a sort of parody of Alcoholics Anonymous, which helps Sylvester cure his bird addiction. However, Sylvester still struggles to curb said addiction. Christof, start us off. What did you think of Birds Anonymous?
Well, maybe first my thoughts in general about Tweety and Sylvester. One of the great things that came out of your podcast so far was Gordon coining the term big guy, little guy to basically explain a dynamic that goes through many shorts that are getting nominated. And I think what all big guy, little guy films have in common is that we, as the audience, are supposed to root for the little guy because he is at a natural disadvantage. We are supposed to root for Jerry and not for Tom. We are supposed to root for Chip and Dale and not for Donald Duck. We are supposed to root for the Roadrunner and not Wile E. Coyote, even although they are the same height. I think they're basically big guy, little guy in spirit. I can tell you there is no way on earth that I am ever rooting for Tweety Bird. Tweety Bird is a deceitful little shit who deserves to be eaten. I cannot stand him doing his playing dumb number. And looking at Granny, if Granny is factoring in these shorts, looking at Granny and pretending to be such a nice, cute bird when he is actually evil. He wants bad things to whoever is pursuing them. So that's one thing. I really hate Tweety Bird, so I'm not really prone to loving Tweety Bird shorts. Sylvester, on the other hand, I don't hate him. I have another problem with Sylvester. You called him versatile. You could also say that he doesn't really have a consistent character. Who Sylvester is always very much depending on who is paired with in a short. If you pair him with Tweety Bird or with Speedy Gonzales, then he's the big guy and the big guy, little guy dynamic. However, there are also shorts where he's paired with Porky Pig, and they almost are like Mickey Mouse and Pluto. So it's really hard to describe who Sylvester is on his own. And the things that come to mind first, like the lisp and the general proneness to being clumsy, are also things that Daffy Duck has, only in a more exaggerated way. So I couldn't really tell you who Sylvester is other than a low-rent version of Daffy Duck who often is paired with other characters and whose behavior then depends on who the other character is. Now, to this short in particular, in this short depends on us believing that Sylvester is eating a lot of birds and has withdrawal symptoms because he's not eating a bird at one point. He decides to join Birds Anonymous, which is basically riffing on Alcoholics Anonymous. Mm-hmm. You could also call the short Sylvester Goes to Conversion Therapy, because he is joining a large group of cats who are in one yard and are telling themselves that now they're no longer eating birds. And at one point, even a small birdie is coming along and sitting on the shoulder of one of the cats. And Sylvester behaves in a way, Sylvester, who we have never watched eating a bird in the entirety of his shorts, is suddenly behaving like a heroin addict on cold turkey because he no longer gets to eat a bird. Tweety, being the little shit that he is actually teasing him and saying something like, "Don't you like me anymore, putty tat?" And it's just, it has its funny moments, but overall, I don't really know what this short wants to be. Is it poking fun at Alcoholics Anonymous? Is it there's this other character who suddenly appears, this other cat who prevents Sylvester from eating Tweety? Because this is also the short where Sylvester is the closest to actually getting to eat Tweety, until this cat intervenes, this other cat intervenes. And at the end, this other cat suddenly wants to eat Tweety himself, and Sylvester is keeping him from him. It's a bit of a mess. I'm not entirely sure what this film wants to say. It is funny in places, but overall, I don't really like it. Although I can't rule out entirely that the fact that I really hate Tweety Bird is part of the reason why I don't really love this film.
One of the favorite things about having you on, and also one of the great things about this podcast, is we get to hear lots of rants about how cartoon characters and how much people dislike certain ones for whatever reason. It's like, I certainly have my fair share, and you've been on to rant about Mickey Mouse and all that,
and Minnie Mouse.
And Minnie Mouse, of course, as it's like it's always fun to hear, and you just thoroughly go through why Tweety sucks, why Sylvester sucks, and why this short sucks. And also, quick shout out to Gordon again. Thank you for coining the term "big guy, little guy." We are forever in your debt. And as
also,
for
I'm not saying Sylvester sucks. I don't care about Sylvester. He doesn't suck. He doesn't have much of a character to be really annoying me.
A problem with Sylvester as a character.
Yes.
But as for this short, one of the first things about it is that it reminded me a bit of Life with Feathers, which was a previous nominee on this podcast, for the Oscars. We don't nominate the shorts here, but yes, that one is a similar thing about like Sylvester suddenly doesn't want to eat a bird and has to struggle with trying to not want to eat a bird, or it's like, but in that one, it's like there's a bird who wants to commit suicide, but Sylvester thinks it's poison and thus doesn't want to eat it. Well, this one, Sylvester himself chooses not to want to eat birds anymore, and does a lot of the same jokes that we saw in that one. Like he turns on the radio and suddenly there's a bunch of mentions of birds and whatever, and it's just like I really liked Life with Feathers, and I ended up liking this a lot too. Like I understand that some people might be turned off by it, like kind of making fun of like Alcoholics Anonymous and stuff, but I think the focus of the short is mainly just like suddenly Sylvester doesn't want to eat birds, but is like being tempted into trying to eat it again, and as this, and I think that's a fun like twist on the normal dynamic where it is just like oh, Sylvester tries and fails to eat Tweety. And it's like I've talked a bit before how I find some of the Sylvester Tweety shorts to be just kind of rote and repetitive, but this one does a little twist on it and it keeps it very energetic for me. And oh, there was something else I wanted to say, but I just forgot it. But yeah, and I like the other cat who has a voice that's very reminiscent of Marvin the Martian, and which kind of distracted me a little bit. But I like the character, and I like the bit at the end where suddenly he wants to eat Tweety instead. Oh, I wanted to comment on how you brought up that we never see Sylvester eat a bird ever. Like he does, like in Speedy Gonzales, we find out that apparently he's this master mouse catcher down in Mexico, but in America he can't eat a bird to save his life. But apparently this short thinks that he is just so good at eating birds, and he eats them so much that he has to stop. And it's just like, but we've never seen him eat Tweety. We've never seen him eat any bird. Not even the one where the bird tries to kill himself via Sylvester. He doesn't end up eating the bird. And so it's just a weird thing to try and say that Sylvester is addicted to eating birds when he clearly isn't. He just tries to and fails, and that's his life. But then again, this is just a silly little Looney Tune cartoon. What's the point in analyzing it that much?
I have a question about the animation style of this one. I'm not quite sure if I should call it rustic or expressionistic, because there's some interesting angles this is drawn in, but also there's not a lot of background detail. And I haven't watched a lot of Tweety shorts recently, so I'm not entirely sure if this is how they normally look, but I've found the look interesting. I'm not entirely sure whether I like it.
I didn't notice anything off about the animation, although, maybe what you noticed could be just the fact that like at this time period, the studios are like giving less and less funding to theatrical animation, and thus the shorts are a bit cheaper. And also with the influence of UPA, the studios are also intentionally trying to have more limited backgrounds and play a bit more with like angles and such. So maybe both of those things combined, like at least to your perspective, made things a bit different in terms of the animation. Although maybe with me like watching all these shorts and seeing the gradual changes, I didn't really pick up on it over time. Who knows?
Probably.
Yes. Anything else you'd like to say about Birds Anonymous? It's just another short like Life with Feathers, where Sylvester doesn't want to eat Tweety, or a bird. I keep forgetting that it's not Tweety in Life with Feathers.
Let's move on to the next one.
All right. Let's move on to our second nominee, which is One Droopy Night, directed by Michael Law. This is the second and final nomination for William Hanna and Joseph Barbera, as well as the first and only nomination for Droopy. A lot to discuss here. First, a quick background on Droopy. For those who don't know, while MGM was getting great success from their Tom and Jerry series in the 40s and 50s, with William Hanna and Joseph Barbera directing those shorts, MGM also had Tex Avery on the payroll for a while, and he pretty much did everything else that wasn't Tom and Jerry. He created several original characters, and the most popular of which was Droopy, a dog who is the antithesis of a lot of other cartoon characters. Droopy is very mellow and monotone, and though also defeating many adversaries, especially those who underestimate little Droopy. At this point in MGM's history, Tex Avery had been fired and went over to Walter Lantz Productions, and a member of Avery's animation unit, Michael Law, took over the Droopy series. Then, as we discussed in a previous episode, Fred Quimby retired from MGM in 1955, and William Hanna and Joseph Barbera took over the MGM animation studio. But by 1957, the larger MGM studio looked at the numbers and realized that re-releasing old shorts made about as much money as making new ones and didn't require production costs either. So they axed the whole animation studio. And what does this mean for Hanna-Barbera? Well, since they were forced out of theatrical animation, they moved into television, and so many of these animation studios seem to be doing at this time. They formed the now famous Hanna-Barbera Studios and acquired an old friend of the podcast, Screen Gems, to distribute, and history began to be made. Their first show was the Rough and Ready show about a dog and cat duo, then was Huckleberry Hound and Quick Draw McGraw, both successes in their own right. But in 1960, they created the Flintstones, which changed everything. It was a massive hit. It became the longest running animated sitcom until The Simpsons. Hanna-Barbera were already icons of animation with the Tom and Jerry shorts, but with their immense influence on television animation, they are two of the most important people in the entire history of animation. But I digress. One Droopy night tells the story of a dragon terrorizing a kingdom. The king makes an offer that whoever kills the dragon will get the hand of the princess. Two knights take on the challenge, Sir Butchalot and Sir Droopalot. And I thought this was a pretty fun short. Like, I haven't seen much of Droopy, but I am well aware of his character, or he's just a very very sad kind of. He reminds me a bit of like Piglet and Eeyore from the Winnie the Pooh stuff, like combined into one character. But I think the comedy around him is really great. They really do well playing off of how characters like really underestimate Droopy, and I love how in this short, like, Droopy is like, he sneaks up on the dragon and then like is stabbing it with his sword and hitting it with mace, but it does absolutely nothing. It's like Droopy is very, very pathetic in his normal form. But the second that you make fun of him or underestimate him, that's when he gets mad. And then that's when he finally gets all the strength to defeat the character or whatever he's up against, or in this short, the dragon. And that just really works for me. It's just very simple, but very effective. And I really want to watch more Droopy shorts because I just love this one. How about you, Christof?
Well, I have previously gone on the record as saying that the only dogs I care about are Pluto and Gromit, but I have to admit that Droopy is really missing from the list. I have always felt a certain kinship to Droopy, and I love how he is stoic in the face of adversity. He feels like he is a pessimist deep down, so he can never be shocked by anything because he's been expecting the worst in the first place anyway. And I really like how he just goes so unassuming, sometimes breaking the fourth wall in his shorts and basically telling the audience that, well, that's it. And he's emerged victorious at the end. I really like this character who's so often underestimated by the other characters around him, being the winner at the end. Now here, in this particular film, I think it's not really a classic Droopy short because he is actually breaking character at one point and crying and wailing just before he basically snaps and becomes victorious, which is a bit of a shame that the only Oscar nomination Droopy has is one where you see him crying, where he usually is famously completely devoid of emotions and what makes him so special. But it's still kind of a fun short. I mean, there are two levels of big guy, little guy in this one. On the one hand, we got Droopy versus Butch, who are a big dog and a small dog, and who have their own little infight. However, both are fighting against the dragon, who is, of course, much bigger than both of them. And there are different ways how these two are fighting the dragon. I mean, when Butch, or Sir Butchalot, comes along, the dragon always sees him from afar, and he's always annihilating Butch. He is destroying him, torching him, humiliating him. We never see Droopy coming from afar. The dragon always notices Droopy when he's already at him and stabbing him. And Droopy is always hilariously ineffective. He basically gets brushed off by the dragon, flying away or hopping away. So this is basically this dragon fighting these two off in different ways. And only at the end, after Droopy has this breakdown and suddenly starts to cry, he gets these additional powers and fights the dragon himself. It's kind of fun to watch overall. I maybe would have wished that we would have at least once seen the dragon actually being menacing, because we never really see him leave his cave. So could basically wonder, why are they fighting the dragon anyway? What we are being told that he's a menace to everyone. We never see him be a menace to everyone. And at the end, he is basically degraded to a pet. But still, it's fun to watch. It's not 100% pure Droopy, but still Droopy enough to make me really enjoy it for the sake of the character.
I actually really liked how, like, the dragon really didn't care about how Butch and Droopy
Yes.
were fighting him. It's just like he always just does some like simple thing to get rid of Butch and Droopy. It's like, especially with Droopy, it's just like when he's like poking him with the sword, he just seems kind of like annoyed. It's like, okay, you can stop now. And then like at one point he like twists his legs and Droopy ends up like one of those wind up toys. Whereas another point he blows a cloud of smoke around him and just like blows him away. And it's just like, and part of me is thinking, is just like, maybe this dragon isn't actually menace. Like maybe the king just doesn't like the fact that there's a dragon nearby town. It's like bad for business or something. So he wants someone to go kill it. I don't know. But they added a lot of character into the dragon, which just made me like the short even more. This is just a really fun short that does really well with the classic big guy, little guy dynamic.
Yeah, that's right. And as you said, the dragon almost behaves a bit like Droopy himself in that he doesn't really mind the fact that these other two are attacking him. He's annoyed, so he's showing some emotion, but he's not really getting angry. He's more like he's doing it for sports.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he just wants to rest on his Sunday afternoon, but he has to deal with these two idiots who want to try and kill him. And it's just like, okay, whatever. But then, of course, he makes the fatal mistake of taunting Droopy by like drawing on his portrait of the princess, and so that makes Droopy mad, and then he easily beats up the dragon. And then at the end, we see that Droopy has married the princess, and the dragon is living in his house to light his cigars. Great ending. The best way this could have ended.
At least for Droopy.
At least for Droopy, yeah. All right. Any final thoughts in this short, or would you like to move on?
I think we can move on.
All right, so our third nominee is Tabasco Road, directed by Robert McKinson. This is the 11th and final nomination for Edward Selzer, and the second nomination for Speedy Gonzalez. Yes, Edward Selzer is also leaving us this year, though it's nothing too complicated. Selzer is simply retiring, and next year we will see the first nomination of the new head of Warner Brothers, who's John W. Burton. So no long paragraph for this one. We're going straight into Tabasco Road. Speedy Gonzalez is out at the bar, but his friends Pablo and Fernando drunkenly wander out looking for a cat to fight. And they find one and end up outmatched. So Speedy has to go save them and defeat the cat. Christof, what did you think of this short?
Well, I rather like the original Speedy Gonzalez, which pits him against Sylvester. This one, however, well, if you think that drunk mice speaking Spanish or Spanglish are inherently funny, this is a great short for you. If you actually expect jokes from your animated short film, not so great. This is 6 minutes long, and the closest thing it has to an actual joke is a slow motion replay of Speedy Gonzales saving one of his friends. The rest is just these two drunk mice, which reminded me a bit of Mr. Magoo in that they are at best semi-aware of the danger they are in, trying. They're not even trying to get home, because at one point, one of them is home and he's leaving home straight away to get back into danger. And Speedy, who is fast and who speaks Spanish or Spanish-English mix, saving them. And it's just not funny. I didn't chuckle once. It's just dull, and I just didn't like it.
Yeah, it like the first Speedy Gonzales short, it told a really good story, building up to a Speedy Gonzales character, and it had a bunch of jokes about Sylvester. Like it did a lot on the Speedy Gonzales is fast and can easily get the cheese format for that short. It just did a lot of jokes around that. But this one, like, not only are there not that many jokes, but it's just like half the jokes are just seem to be about like, oh, they talk different, isn't that funny? And it just doesn't work that well. However, like, I still like Speedy Gonzales, like, as a character. I think he is like one very endearing. Like he is a very clear like hero, and he's just very charming. And I like how he just kind of begrudgingly has to save these two. It's just like he's just kind of like, come on, guys, why can't you just go home and leave the cats alone? But of course, when the cats threaten to eat the mice, he has to go save them. And so yeah, and then Speedy then makes quick work of the cat, although he's very big and like chunky cat, and it's like I thought he was a dog at first, but no, it is a cat. And it's like when Speedy's fighting the cat, it's good, it's fine, it's classic Warner Brothers big guy little guy shorts, but it just doesn't end up. There isn't enough focusing on like the fights in order for it to actually be fun and good. And just like there are, as we talked about last time, there are a lot of defenders of Speedy Gonzales who claim that like he is kind of like very heroic, and he is like he's more than just like a stereotype. And it's like, for the character himself, I think that's true. But like a lot of his shorts just focus on how he's a Mexican stereotype. And a lot of the humor in the shorts is just like, oh, he's Mexican, isn't that funny? And it doesn't work because racism is bad and racism is not funny. So yeah, it's a Speedy Gonzales short. And some of them are good. This one isn't really.
Yeah. Maybe one more question, maybe a question whether you notice it as well, or whether it's just something I'm imagining. In the final scene, after the butch cat is being driven out of the city, CT limits, as it's somewhere saying on the sign, because Spanish accents are hilarious. In the final scene, the two drunk mice are trying to get more cats to chase them because they had so much fun.
Mm-hmm.
And I would say that there's a cat looking out of a bin on the right, which looks very much like Tom. Did only I see that?
I did notice that cat and had a similar color scheme to Tom the cat. I think it seemed to me like an intentional reference, and although they did kind of like distinguish the design enough to make it seem not exactly like Tom, I guess, to avoid, lawyers or something. But yeah, I think there was like an intentional reference to
okay, I'm
Tom
glad I'm not
Jerry.
the only one who saw that.
Yeah. And I actually did also like the bit about how like I like how you mentioned that they had kind of Mr. Magoo-esque quality with them, because there actually is a lot of Magoo in there. How they keep mistaking one thing for another thing. Like they think Speedy Gonzales is a cat and try to fight him. But also like Mr. Magoo has a very kind of like, he thinks he can conquer anything kind of thing. And these mice are very much the same way. Like I could imagine Mr. Magoo, who like, maybe he does this in a short, but he tries to fight someone that is bigger than him, thinking he can, but it's like he doesn't realize how outmatched he is. And and I like that bit with the mice. Like if only they weren't racist caricatures as well.
Yeah.
And speaking of racist caricatures, we are on to our fourth nominee, which is Trees
Whew.
and Jamaica Daddy, directed by Lou Keller and Fred Crippen. This is the 14th and final nomination for Stephen Bosustow. The downfall of the theatrical animated short takes another victim. While UPA enjoyed much success in the first half of the decade, times become hard for them, and as the decade waned, a familiar story here. UPA chugged along until the end of the decade, and I guess in an all-or-nothing attempt to make profits, they've released a big feature film, 1001 Arabian Nights, which is an adaptation of the Aladdin tale that also inserts Mr. Magoo. The film flopped, and Stephen Bosustow was left with no choice but to sell the studio to Henry G. Saperstein in 1960, who quickly pivoted all of their efforts towards television, though UPA did end up releasing a second feature, Gay Paris, in 1962. So the parting note we're left with is Trees and Jamaica Daddy, which is part of the Ham and Hattie series. Each Ham and Hattie film was actually two shorts, with one following Hamilton Ham, the other following a little girl named Hattie. Trees is essentially just an animated music video for a song about how great trees are that also happens to feature Hattie in it. And Jamaica Daddy is a calypso band performing a song about the need to reproduce, and the character Hamilton puts on a Mexican or some kind of ethnic makeup to it.
Jamaican, I would say.
Yeah, it's
it's
not
Jamaica Daddy after all.
Yes, Jamaica. I don't know where this is 2 a.m. for me. I am tired. Anyway, these shorts, so this is two shorts, and neither of them are particularly good. Trees is just a bad song put to mediocre visuals, and Jamaica Daddy is a slightly better song put to slightly better visuals, but is also kind of racist, It's neither of which are particularly good. That's about all there is to say. There's nothing to these shorts. Yeah. How about you?
I mean, out of the two of us, you are the one who is prone to liking shorts which are just a catchy song with some animation set to it. If you don't like this, I'm really not liking this. I mean, the first one is a very earnest song about how great trees are, with some animation about a girl who likes trees. I assume the girl is Hattie then, and a cat chasing a bird, and it's just nothing. It's just very nothing. And then comes Jamaica Daddy, which is a calypso style song, and we see how, I assume that's then, what's his name, Hamilton Ham changing from an old man into a blackface wearing younger man and singing a song in bad English about how men must fuck to get children. I mean, the central line in this song is, it's man's responsibility to perpetuate the family tree, which is a message which seems so important that we see it spelled out in writing, not once, but twice during the 3.5 minutes that this thing is. And I'm not sure if it's probably not meant as earnestly as trees, which is really just saying trees are great. But it's not outright satirical as well. I mean, also it's man's responsibility. Women are mentioned in the song only in terms of people who give birth. And I want to give it the benefit of the doubt to say that it's maybe a bit satirical. But as I say, it's also racist, not just because of the accent, and it's I don't like this. I don't know why these two are stuck together. There's nothing these two halves have in common except for that both are a song set to animation. This is not for me.
Yeah, I looked up Ham and Hattie, just trying to figure out anything about them. There is not much I could find about them. I just found like other listings of the short, which I imagine is only gets so widely put up on all these film websites because it is an Oscar nominee. And so just like, oh, if our database wants to be anything, it has to have every single Oscar nominee. And it's just like, I I can't find much about them. All I seem to find about them is that, oh, they had these 4 different short films in this short-lived series about where each one has 2 different shorts, and that's it. I can't really find much information on the other Ham and Hattie shorts. Um, I I I didn't try to watch the other ones, but I imagine they're probably the same thing. I don't I want to hope that like the other ones aren't just, 2 songs that have some animation accompanying them, and just there's like some of them are actually like entertaining experiences that try to do something. But no, for what we have here, this is just like we said, it's just 2 songs. One of them is about trees, one of them is about having kids, and that's all we're left with. And what we're left with isn't that good. And it's like the animation doesn't really make up for anything. The songs aren't that good, and it's just like there's nothing here. And it's just like I'm surprised we've been able to talk about it for as long as we have.
Yeah, the second song is kind of catchy.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah,
that's the best thing I could say about it.
yeah. I kind of liked the song Jamaica Daddy, though it has its own problems different from trees. It's
Yeah,
just
well, family trees are maybe that's the
maybe
connection.
that's
the first
it
one's
actually.
about trees, the second
They're
one's about
both
family
about
trees.
trees.
Yeah, we found it.
We figured it out. Why trees and Jamaica Daddy are put together? Because they're both talking about trees and how great trees are.
Yeah, I mean, the most important line, first one is, if we had no trees at all, what would we build a tree house in? And the most important line, second one is, it's man's responsibility to perpetuate the family tree.
So it's like building your house, building a tree house in a regular tree, and then building your family tree inside a home.
Inside a woman, because
inside a woman, yes.
yeah, I mean, you apparently you need a woman to perpetuate the family tree.
Allegedly.
Allegedly.
The scientists are out on that one. We'll figure it out shortly. But in the meantime, we'll move on to our 5th and final nominee, which is The Truth About Mother Goose, directed by Wolfgang Reitherman and Bill Justice. This is the 33rd nomination for Walt Disney in this category. In 1956, the Disney company shut down its short film division, and any theatrical shorts made from that point on were done via the feature films division. Because of this, the shorts became a lot less frequent, and the ones that were made, many were created for educational purposes, including today's nominee. This short takes 3 nursery rhymes and then explains the origins of each one. Little Jack Horner being about a stolen deed, Mary Mary Quite Contrary being about Mary Queen of Scots, and London Bridge is Falling Down being about, well, London Bridge, the bridge in London. Christof, what did you think of our final nominee?
I mean, our final nominee is basically 3 short films, only that they are connected a lot better than the 2 short films we've seen in the previous nominee. As you said, it's almost educational because it earnestly tries to explain the background of 3 English language nursery rhymes. However, out of those 3, I think London Bridge is basically half the runtime. It's 14 or 15 minutes. Little Jack Horner is about 3.5 minutes. Mary Mary Quite Contrary is about 3.5 minutes. London Bridge is 7 minutes. And I almost feel a bit like Goldilocks when I talk about this, because Little Jack Horner is basically an anecdote without much substance to it. It's a deed was hidden inside a pie and some guy stole it. Then there's Mary Mary Quite Contrary, which is trying to tell the entire life story of Mary Stuart, also in 3.5 minutes. So it's cramming a lot of things in there. So the first bit is maybe a bit too slight, and the second is maybe a bit too dense. But then comes London Bridge, which is just right, which is 7 minutes. It's the centerpiece of the entire thing. It's the most ambitious in terms of the animation. And it's 7 minutes long, which is basically the length of the other shorts we had. And I almost wondered why they didn't just grab Little Jack Horner and Mary Mary Quite Contrary and made it just about London Bridge, which is really great in telling how London Bridge came about and what happened over the centuries and how London Bridge was burning and the Great Fire of London was built up again and then destroyed. And I really loved the London Bridge part, which with its recurring motif of painters on the bridge noticing what's just happening there. And I'm not saying that the first two parts are bad. They are also quite good, actually. It's only they're paling in comparison to London Bridge for me, because Little Jack Horner, it is very slight. I don't really know what to say about it, except that Henry VIII appears in it, and I quite like how he is drawn or painted in there. The second bit crams a lot of Mary Stuart, Mary Queen of Scots, into 3.5 minutes. It hits all the important beats of her life, but it really condensed it so much that you really wish it had more time just to do it. It also looks quite good. We get, just like the first one, we get a very fun Henry VIII, we get a very fun Elizabeth I in this one. But still, they are good, but they are nowhere near as great as London Bridge, which I really enjoyed a lot. And this London Bridge segment of The Truth About Mother Goose is really great, and it's really, if this was released alone as a standalone, it would be my easy choice for the best of this entire lineup. The animation itself, if you compare it to other Disney films, it's nothing that stands out particularly. It's clearly the most traditionally sophisticated animation of this entire set of nominees that we were talking about. So it's looking good, even if it's not exactly exceptional. Overall, I really liked it. But again, London Bridge is clearly the best thing about it.
Well, I really like this one. I think I'm going to have a lot, just all kinds of positive things to say about this one. First off, I really just loved how it was animated. I think there's a lot of great uses of like shadows and stuff, and like just the lighting in general. I know it's not actually lighting, but you know, the artistic use of like light or whatever, it's just really, really well done. And the colors too, it's just so lush and gorgeous, which I find is common in like Disney in this period when they're using their theatrical or feature animation studio to make the shorts. Is just like Pigs is Pigs was very similar in this way, and just very, very vibrant color work and everything. It's just so gorgeous to look at. And as for the deconstruction of the three nursery rhymes, I agree with you. It is kind of weird watching it, because it's like you start with Jack Horner and it's just this little thing. It's like, oh, okay, hey, it's gonna quickly cover these things. But then Mary Mary Quite Contrary is a bit longer, and it goes through the whole life of Mary Queen of Scots, and it's just like, oh, okay, so it's trying to cover these things more broadly. But then London Bridge is double the length of Mary Mary Quite Contrary, and it's just like, okay, I think there was a bit of a scaling issue here, because wouldn't you want to have them like kind of equal in quality, or equal in length? But no, it's just like, it's mainly just London Bridge, but then, oh, let's just put these other two in there. And it's just like, but of the three segments, I think I liked Mary Queen of Scots more, because I think, so what each segment does is that it sings the nursery rhyme at the beginning and the end of each segment to like juxtapose like how you imagine the nursery rhyme, and then with the context of the whole history, he just sings it for you, and like how that juxtaposes. And I think with Mary Mary Quite Contrary, that really, really works. Like how you imagine it was just this nice song about this nice lady, but then it's just like going through her kind of dark history. It's just like the song takes this much darker tone. Oh, and that juxtaposition really works. And like London Bridge, it's really just a song about the bridge, and it's just like, oh, London Bridge is falling down, ha ha ha, and it's just like nothing's really different between the beginning and the end. It's just like, oh, they're singing about the bridge, and now they're singing about the bridge, and it's just like there's no juxtaposition there. But yeah, I really liked all three segments, and I agree with you that the London Bridge segment does really well in like just going through the history of London Bridge. However, I think that one actually might have been too long for me. I think Mary Mary Quite Contrary was like the perfect length, and the London Bridge just kind of went on for too long. Or maybe it's just because it had the other two shorter segments before it that it just kind of felt too long. But I just kind of wish that uh it just condensed things a little bit more, because I felt it going a bit too slowly, a bit too like droning with the history or whatever. Because like in between the nursery rhyme segments, it just has like the standard narrator just telling you the history, and I think the storytelling through the history just becomes a bit too dull through the London Bridge segment. It's just like, okay, they're really just going through the whole history of the bridge, all like hundreds of years, and it's just like, let's speed this up a little bit.
Okay. Well,
But
I think I think Mary Mary Quite Contrary has the potential to be the greatest of the three, but it's just too condensed. It's just trying to cram too much into too short of a time, where you basically, if you really want to get the story, you have to go to Wikipedia and then read the more detailed version of what just actually was explained to you there. I think a reason why I like London Bridge so much is London Bridge really is basically the most visual in terms of the story, because you just see how the bridge changes over the centuries.
Mhm.
And I think that their animation is really a great medium to tell that. Whereas Mary Mary Quite Contrary is much more depending on the voiceover to really tell you all the things that happened in this very tumultuous life. Mary Mary Quite Contrary, it is very, as I said, I like The Truth About Mother Goose a lot. It's just like the one thing a lot better than the other two, because I think, well, when you said it should all be the same length, I don't see how you could make Little Chick Horner any longer, because it's just this one anecdote. I mean, it's even stretching it to 3 minutes is a bit much. And Mary Mary Quite Contrary needed more time to really get the full potential. It's still very good at what it is, but I wanted it to have a bit more room to breathe, and London Bridge just hits perfectly for me. And I really wonder, as you said, that when it felt a little long to do, I really wonder if the other two weren't in, was just London Bridge, whether you'd feel the same about it. That would be quite interesting.
Yeah, I am kind of curious, like if it was just London Bridge by itself, or maybe if even like London Bridge was like the first one, like then I had like Little Jack Horner in the middle and then Mary at the end. Like maybe I'd feel different. Or like it'll like, oh, London Bridge is perfect length, and these two just kind of rush by so quickly. And one thing I wanted to point out was like so in like the 60s and 70s, like Disney was not as financially popular as it is now, or as it was back in like the 30s. And so what you see in a lot of Disney stuff is that they are stealing a lot of some like animation from like earlier films. And I noticed that in briefly here, like there's a shot of Mary Stewart. She's like running down the stairs in one shot, and it's like I could swear that exact thing is taken directly from like Cinderella, and just like they just put the Mary model over it, and it's just like they do this a lot in their later period. But it's like, did it start here? Is this the first time they stole in their animation? And I imagine it can't be. Like I feel like they must, like whenever they think of, they must have like a reservoir of like old things that they can just pull from to trace over or whatever. But it's just like I just like noticing that, like noticing little things like that. It's a lot of fun.
I mean, as long as they're pulling from their own archive, it's not even really stealing. It's just reusing something that worked great before.
Yeah, it's not. I'm not like accusing them or any of it. It's just like it's a fun little detail. Oh, seems like this is the same thing as that.
Yeah.
But yeah, this is a great short. And now that we've gone through and talked about the 5 nominees, let's rank them all. Christoph, start us off with your number 5.
I'm really not sure what number 4 and number 5 is for me because they're two shorts I just don't care about in our races and bits. I think my number 5 is Tabasco Road because it's just not funny when it really should be, and it has absolutely nothing going on for it for me.
My number 5 is Trees and Jamaica Daddy because it's two shorts that are just absolutely nothing and not really fun in any kind of sense. Number 4.
My number 4 is Trees in Jamaica Daddy. It could just as well be number 5. The only reason why I put it in 4 is because the tune of Jamaica Daddy is kind of catchy. So this is at least something to cling on to. So this is my number 4.
My number 4 is unsurprisingly Tabasco Road. Like you said, it's a Speedy Gonzalez short. It's too racist in parts, but some of the Looney Tunes comedy kind of lifts it up above that for me. Number 3.
My number 3 is Birds Anonymous. I started this episode with a long rant how I hate Tweety Bird, and still it's number 3 in this lineup, which basically, as I mentioned at the beginning, this is not a really great lineup. I don't like Tweety Bird. It's still better than the other two I mentioned before. My number 3 is Birds Anonymous.
Yeah. And Tweety is barely in the short anyway. Like it's mostly just Sylvester. But anyway, my number 3 is One Droopy Night, and it's like we jump up a lot from number 4 to number 3. Like my top 3 are all shorts that I loved, and One Droopy Night just ends up in number 3 because I like it slightly less than number 2 and number 1. It's just a great fun classic big guy little guy short. Number 2.
You jump up a lot from number 4 to number 3. I personally jump up a lot from number 3 to number 2. My number 2 is One Droopy Night. I love Droopy. I feel a kinship to Droopy. This is not 100% pure Droopy for me. This is maybe not him at his best, but it's still a very fun Droopy short, which shows many of his qualities, and I liked it a lot.
My number 2 is Birds Anonymous. I just had a lot of fun with this twist on the classic Tweety Sylvester dynamic. I think Sylvester, the way they portray Sylvester's withdrawals or whatever is a lot of fun, and I like the other cat that sounds like Marvin the Martian. He's just a great character, and it really accentuates the whole short as a whole. Just a great Looney Tunes short. And number 1 appears to be the same for both of us.
We seem to agree. My number 1, and apparently also your number 1, is The Truth About Mother Goose. If this was just London Bridge, I would be absolutely enthusiastic about putting this on number 1 because I really love London Bridge. The other two are dragging it down slightly, but it is the most accomplished in terms of animation. It has an interesting concept, and it is even the lesser parts are still great to watch. In this lineup, The Truth About Mother Goose is my clear number 1.
Mm-hmm. Same here. Like I love the animation. I just love the way it goes through the stories, even if it does kind of my one fault is that it does slightly drag at parts, but it's just a great short. One of Disney's best from this period. Just wonderful animated short, even if it is quite long for an animated short at this time. But yeah, that's our ranks. And before we end our show, are there any final thoughts you'd like to share, Christoph, or anything you'd like to promote?
I'm just want to say that I'm always happy to be here as a guest. If you are interested in more, if Twitter still exists when this podcast comes out in January, I'm at Judge Roy Snyder. I'm also Christof and I on Letterboxd, and I'm Mr. Whiplash on Sporkle, where I'm your curator for the actor and German subcategories. You can find me there if for some reason you want to hear or read more from me.
This is that's the second time on this podcast that somebody has been talking about Elon Musk and the whole Twitter shutdown, and I'm sure it won't be the end of that. But yes, And we are always happy to have you here, Christoph. And we already have your next episode planned, so which will be a surprise for the listeners to figure out. But and again,
it will be probably one where I'm gonna be a lot more enthusiastic about at least one of the short that's nominated.
But yes, thank you, Christoph, for coming on the show, and thank you, listener, for tuning in. This has been the Short Podcast about short films. Until next time, goodbye.